I should have said no the moment Connor asked me. Not because pretending to be his boyfriend sounded impossible, but because of the way he said it. Too casual. Too rehearsed. Like he'd already played the whole thing out in his head and just needed my body to fill the role. Just for the weekend, he said, leaning back against my kitchen counter like this was nothing. My parents are visiting. They won't get off my back otherwise. I laughed. Actually laughed. Dude, you're straight. And single. Since when do your parents expect you to show up with a boyfriend? Connor rolled his eyes. Since my mom decided my roommate phase is code for being emotionally stunted. She's been trying to set me up with her coworker's daughter for months. I need this to stop. I should explain something first. Connor and I had been best friends for almost 8 years. We met freshman year of college, bonded over shitty dorm food and a mutual hatred for early morning classes, and somehow never drifted apart. We'd lived together twice, traveled together, got drunk together more times than I could count. He knew I was gay. I'd known he was straight forever. That line had always felt solid. Safe. That's why this shouldn't have been a big deal. So what? I said, shrugging. You want me to come to dinner and hold your hand a little? Smile politely? Pretend we're… What, in love? Exactly, he said, snapping his fingers. You're a lifesaver. There it was again. That word. Lifesaver. The way he smiled at me like I was doing him a favor, not volunteering to step into something weird. I hesitated. Just for a second. Connor noticed. He always did. Come on, Owen, he said, softer now. It's not like it means anything. We already joke about being married half the time. That was true. We did. Way too often, actually. But jokes hit different when you're the only one imagining what it'd be like if they weren't jokes. Fine, I said. But we set boundaries. Of course, he replied immediately. Too fast. Whatever you need. I told myself that was enough. That I was being dramatic. That this was just acting. What I didn't know yet was that Connor was terrible at pretending, and even worse at stopping once he started. The drive to his parents' place was 2 hours of nervous energy and bad indie music. Connor drove, one hand on the wheel, the other tapping along to the beat like always. Everything felt normal. Too normal. Which somehow made it worse. So, he said, glancing at me, we should probably figure out details. I raised an eyebrow. Details? Yeah, like how long we've been together. How we met. Stuff they're definitely going to ask. I exhaled. Connor, this is already weird. Let's not overdo it. He grinned. Overdoing it is how you make it believable. That should have been my second warning. We pulled into his parents' driveway just before sunset. Big house. Quiet neighborhood. The kind of place where everyone knows everyone and nothing stays private. As soon as I stepped out of the car, Connor was suddenly different. Closer. He didn't even look at me when his hand brushed mine. But he didn't pull away either. Then, without warning, he laced his fingers through mine. I froze. Connor, I muttered under my breath. Relax, he whispered back, leaning in just enough that his shoulder pressed into my arm. They're watching. I followed his gaze. His mom was already at the window, so I let him hold my hand. And the messed up part? It didn't feel like acting. His grip was warm, familiar, like it had always belonged there and we'd just never noticed. Inside, his parents were welcoming, friendly, exactly as advertised. His mom hugged me a little too long. His dad asked too many questions. And Connor stayed glued to my side like this was second nature. At dinner, his mom smiled at us over her wine glass. You two seem very comfortable. Connor didn't miss a beat. We are. He reached for my hand under the table. I should have pulled away. Instead, I squeezed back. That night, when we were finally alone in the guest room, one bed, because of course there was only one bed, I laughed nervously and said, You're really committing to this, huh? Yeah, he said quietly. Guess I am. He looked at me then. Really looked at me. Not like a friend. Not like someone playing a role. And that's when I realized this had already gone too far. Because whatever game Connor thought we were playing, I wasn't sure he knew how to stop. And I wasn't sure I wanted him to. I barely slept. Not because the bed was uncomfortable, it wasn't. Connor's parents had one of those guest mattresses that somehow felt better than my own. The problem was the person lying next to me, breathing slow and steady like none of this was a big deal. We'd agreed to act normal once the door closed. That lasted maybe 5 minutes. Connor had kicked off his shoes, peeled off his hoodie, and flopped onto the bed like he always did when we traveled together. Same habits, same loose confidence. Except this time, there was nowhere else for me to go. I lay on my back, staring at the ceiling. "You good?" he asked quietly. "Yeah," I lied. "Just tired," he hummed in response, rolling onto his side to face me. "You were great tonight," he said. "My mom loves you." I snorted. "Your mom thinks we're going to adopt a dog together." Connor smiled at that. "A real one. Soft. Fond. Wouldn't be the worst thing," he said. That was my cue to shut this down. "Connor," I said, keeping my voice light but firm, "we need to dial it back tomorrow." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he studied my face in the dim light from the hallway, like he was trying to memorize it. "Did I mess up?" he asked. The question caught me off guard. Connor never asked that. He was usually so sure of himself. "No," I said quickly. This is starting to feel less like pretending." At breakfast, his mom teased us about how domestic we looked. Connor just laughed and poured me coffee without asking how I took it, because he already knew. Every small thing added up. The familiarity, the ease, the way he kept finding reasons to touch me. A hand on my shoulder, fingers grazing my back as he passed behind me in the kitchen. By the time we left the house to go into town, I was wound so tight I felt dizzy. We walked down the sidewalk side by side, autumn air crisp around us. Connor shoved his hands into his jacket pockets. "Hey," he said, "you're quiet." I stopped walking. "So are you?" I shot back. He turned to face me, brows knitting together. "Okay, what's going on?" I laughed under my breath, sharp and humorless. "You don't get to act confused. Not after last night." Connor's jaw tightened. "I didn't mean to fall asleep like that." "But you did." "Yes," he admitted. "And you didn't move away." That hit harder than I expected. "Because I didn't want to make it weird," I said. "Or because you didn't want to," he countered softly. We stood there, staring at each other, the air between us buzzing with everything we weren't saying. "This was supposed to be fake," I said. "You're straight. I'm your best friend. You don't get to blur that line and then pretend it's nothing." Connor ran a hand through his hair, pacing once before stopping in front of me again. "I'm not pretending it's nothing," he said. My stomach dropped. "Then what are you saying?" He hesitated. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked scared. "I don't know," he admitted. "But whatever this is, it doesn't feel fake to me." My chest felt tight. "Connor Dash, I'm not saying it means what you think it means," he rushed on. I need you to stop assuming I have this all figured out." That was the moment something inside me cracked. We stood there in silence, neither of us backing down. Finally, Connor let out a shaky breath and gave a small, crooked smile. "We should probably head back before my mom sends out a search party." "Yeah," I said, my voice rough. "Probably." As we started walking again, his hand brushed mine. This time he didn't grab it. This time he waited. And after a second, just one, I reached for him first. We walked the rest of the way back in silence. Not awkward silence. Heavy silence. The kind that presses against your chest and makes every step feel loaded with meaning. Inside the house, it was like slipping back into character. Connor's mom greeted us with a smile, asked about lunch plans, made some comment about how good we looked together. Connor played along easily. Too easily. I did too. That scared me more than anything. We spent the afternoon helping his dad with random chores. Connor and I worked side by side in the backyard, raking leaves, passing tools back and forth. At one point, his dad went inside to take a call, leaving us alone. Connor leaned on the rake, eyes fixed on the ground. "You okay?" I swallowed. "Are you?" He huffed out a laugh. "Fair." We stood there, surrounded by the quiet rustle of leaves and distant traffic, both of us clearly thinking the same thing and refusing to say it out loud. "I don't want to screw this up," he said finally. My heart thudded. "Screw what up?" He looked at me then. Really looked at me. Us. The word hit harder than it should have. We don't have a newest, I said, even as my chest tightened painfully. Then why does it feel like I'm about to lose something important? He asked quietly. I didn't have an answer. That night, his parents went out for dinner with friends, leaving us alone in the house. I told myself this was good. We needed space, distance, a reset. Instead, we ended up sitting on opposite sides of the couch, a movie playing neither of us was watching. Connor kept glancing at me. I pretended not to notice. Halfway through the movie, he muted the TV. Owen, he said. My pulse spiked. Yeah. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. I nodded, already bracing myself. When you agreed to this, he said slowly, did you already have feelings for me? The room felt too small, too quiet. I considered lying. I was very tired of lying. Yes, I said. Connor's breath hitched. How long? I stared at my hands. Years. He didn't say anything for a long time. I didn't know, he said finally, his voice rough. I know, I replied. That's why this was supposed to stay fake. But it didn't, he said. No, I agreed. It didn't. Connor stood abruptly, pacing the length of the room like he needed to move or he'd combust. I thought I was straight, he said. I mean, I still don't know what I am. But this, with you, it's not just curiosity. My throat went dry. Connor, if you're confused, I'm not confused about how I feel, he cut in. I'm confused about what it means. He stopped in front of me, close enough that I had to tilt my head to look up at him. And I'm terrified, he admitted. Because the idea of crossing that line and losing you, that might be worse than never knowing at all. My chest ached. I don't want to be an experiment, I said softly. I can't be. Connor nodded immediately. I know. I don't want you to be. Can I do something? He asked. My heart pounded so loud I was sure he could hear it. What? Can I kiss you? Everything in me screamed yes. Everything else screamed this will ruin everything. I took a shaky breath. If you do, you don't get to pretend it didn't happen. Connor's hand trembled slightly. I wouldn't, he said. I couldn't. That was all I needed, he said, exhaling. Okay. I laughed softly. You sound like you're convincing yourself. Yeah, he admitted. Because if I don't say it out loud, I might freak out. That made me smile and ache at the same time. We ended up talking. Really talking. For hours. About how long I'd liked him. About the moments he'd written off as nothing that suddenly made sense to him. About how this wasn't something either of us had planned, but somehow felt inevitable in hindsight. Connor sat on the floor in front of me at one point, elbows on his knees, looking up like he used to when we were kids cramming for finals. I don't want to rush this, he said. But I also don't want to pretend we can just go back to normal. There is no normal after this, I said gently. He nodded. That's what I was afraid of. When his parents came home later that night, we'd already agreed on one thing. Whatever this was, it stayed ours for now. No labels. No explanations. Just honesty. The next morning was the last one at his parents' house. Everything felt different now. Every smile from his mom. Every comment about how happy Connor seemed. Every look Connor shot me across the kitchen when no one was watching. We were playing with fire. On the drive home, the car felt smaller than usual. Connor kept one hand on the wheel, the other resting on the center console between us. After 20 minutes of silence, I placed my hand over his. He smiled, eyes still on the road. I've been thinking, he said. That sounds dangerous. He snorted. Always. But when we get back, things can't just stay like they were. I nodded. I know. I don't want to hide you, he said. But I also don't want to make promises I don't understand yet. That was fair. Painfully fair. So what are you saying? I asked. He squeezed my hand. I'm saying I want to try. Slowly. Honestly. And if at any point you feel like this is hurting you, I'll tell you, I said. And if you panic, I'll tell you, he finished. It wasn't a declaration of love. It was better than that. It was real. The first week back was strange. We didn't tell anyone. We still joked, still hung out, still did all the things we always did. But now there were moments charged with something new. Late-night conversations that felt heavier. Lingering looks. The occasional kiss when we were alone. Still tentative, still learning. Connor struggled more than he let on. I could see it in the way he stiffened when someone casually referred to him as straight. He laughed, then grew serious again. I don't want to wake up one day and realize I hurt you because I couldn't figure my shit out fast enough. I leaned up and kissed his cheek. Then don't run from it. Walk through it. With me. He turned, eyes searching mine. You'd really do that? I already am. The first person to notice was his sister. Of course it was. Connor and I were at a small get-together at his place. Nothing wild, just a few friends, cheap beer, music low enough to talk over. I was sitting on the arm of the couch, Connor sprawled beside me. I didn't even realize how close we were until I felt eyes on us. Emma stood across the room, drink forgotten in her hand, staring. Not shocked, not angry, just observant. Later, when Connor went to the kitchen to grab more beers, she slid into his spot like she owned it. So, she said casually, how long has this been going on? My stomach dropped. I don't know what you're talking about. She snorted. Owen, I've known my brother his entire life. He doesn't look at people like that. I swallowed. Like what? Like he's terrified and excited at the same time, she said. So try again. Connor came back before I could answer, freezing slightly when he saw us together. Emma stood, kissed his cheek, and smiled sweetly. I'm heading out. You should walk Owen to his car. Connor blinked. A dash. Now, she added pointedly. The door closed behind her a minute later. Connor stood in the middle of the living room, hands on his hips, staring at the floor. She knows. She suspects, I said quietly. There's a difference. He laughed once, breathless. Not with her. We stood there, the weight of it settling between us. This is what I was afraid of, he admitted. The world noticing before I'm ready. I stepped closer. You don't owe anyone answers yet. Not her. Not anyone. He looked at me then. But I owe you honesty. My chest tightened. Okay. I don't regret this, he said. Not even a little. But I'm starting to realize that if I keep choosing the easy silence, I'm still choosing something. I nodded slowly. Yeah, you are. Connor dragged a hand down his face. I don't want to hide you like some secret, and I don't want to rush into labels just to prove something. I'm not asking for a label, I said. I'm asking to not be erased. That landed. He stepped forward, close enough that I could feel his breath. You won't be. The next test came sooner than expected. 2 days later, we ran into his ex, a girl he'd dated on and off for years, at a coffee shop. She hugged him, laughed too loudly, then turned to me with a curious smile. And you are? Connor hesitated, just a fraction of a second. But I felt it. I'm Owen, I said calmly. Connor's friend. The word hung there wrong and hollow. She nodded, already losing interest, and turned back to him. I excused myself minutes later. Connor followed me outside. Owen, wait. I turned, trying to keep my voice steady. I get it. That was a lot. You froze. He shook his head. No, I chose. That hurt more than if he'd denied it. I wasn't ready, he continued, pained. But I also wasn't ready to watch you walk away like that. I crossed my arms. Connor, I can be patient, but I can't live in limbo. He swallowed hard. What are you saying? I'm saying this only works if you're willing to stand next to me when it counts, I said. Not just when it's easy. Silence stretched between us. Then Connor straightened, like he'd made a decision that scared him. Come back inside, he said. I frowned. Why? Because I'm done pretending, he replied. And I'm done letting fear make choices for me. Inside, his ex was mid-sentence when Connor interrupted her. Owen isn't just my friend, he said, voice steady despite the tension radiating off him. He's someone I care about. A lot. Her eyes flicked between us. Oh, she said. I didn't realize. Connor reached for my hand. Publicly. Clearly. No hesitation. Neither did I. And in that moment, surrounded by strangers, judgment, and uncertainty, Connor chose me. Not perfectly. Not loudly. But honestly, Connor choosing me didn't make things easier. It made things louder. Word spread fast, not in a dramatic gossip blog way, but in that quiet, invasive way where people start looking at you differently before they say anything at all. Friends asked questions that were framed like jokes. Coworkers raised eyebrows. Connor's sister texted him a single message that night. "We need to talk." He didn't show me the text, but I knew it was there. I could feel the tension in the way his shoulders stayed tight, even when we were alone. The talk with Emma happened 2 days later. Connor asked if I wanted to come. I told him no, not because I didn't care, but because this was something he had to do without using me as a shield. When he came back that night, he looked wrung out, like he'd run a marathon emotionally barefoot. "How'd it go?" I asked carefully. He dropped onto the couch beside me and leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "She knew. Said she's known something was off for years." I smiled faintly. "Smart woman." He huffed. "She asked if I was gay. And I told her I don't know," he said. "But I told her I'm not lying anymore. That mattered. A lot." "She wasn't mad," he continued. "Just protective. Of both of us, actually. She told me if I break your heart, she'll ruin my life." I laughed, relief loosening something in my chest. "That tracks." Connor turned to look at me then. "I meant what I said at the coffee shop." "I know." "No," he insisted. "I mean, I'm not halfway in. I'm just halfway scared." I reached for his hand. "Those aren't the same thing." The real breaking point came a week later. We were at a friend's birthday dinner. A big table, lots of noise, too much wine. Someone made an offhand comment about Connor finally settling down with the right girl. The table laughed. Connor didn't. He sat there, jaw tight, staring at his plate like it had personally offended him. I felt it before he did, that familiar pull, that moment where he could either stay quiet or step forward. He set his fork down. "Actually," he said. The table went quiet. "I'm seeing someone," he continued. "And it's not a girl." Every nerve in my body lit up. A few people blinked. Someone said, "Oh." Connor kept going. "I'm still figuring things out. But I care about him, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise." Then, and this part still gets me, he reached across the table and took my hand. Not dramatic, not defiant, certain. No one clapped. No one gasped. Couple people smiled. A couple looked uncomfortable. Life went on. But Connor didn't shrink. Later that night, when we were back at his place, the adrenaline finally wore off. He paced the living room, hands in his hair, laughing like he couldn't believe what he'd done. "I just came out as something in a Thai restaurant," he said. "What the hell is my life?" I laughed, pulling him into me. "You okay?" He nodded into my shoulder. "Yeah, terrified, but lighter." We stood there for a long time. Then he pulled back, serious. "There's one more thing I need to say, and I'm scared if I don't say it now, I'll keep circling it forever." My heart kicked up. "Okay. I don't know what label fits me," he said, "but I know this isn't just about attraction. It's about you. About choosing you." I swallowed. "Connor, I'm not promising I'll have all the answers tomorrow," he said, "but I am promising that I won't disappear when it gets hard." That was it. That was the thing I'd needed from the start. And what we were building, messy, honest, unfinished, felt more solid than anything I'd ever had. Things didn't magically calm down after that, but they finally made sense. Connor stopped pacing around the question of what this was and started focusing on who he was with. That shift was subtle, but I felt it everywhere, in the way he reached for me without checking the room first, in how he said my name like it grounded him, in how he stopped apologizing for not being there yet. One night, a few weeks later, we were lying on his couch, half watching some stupid show. My head was on his chest, his fingers absently tracing the back of my neck. Easy, comfortable, real. "You ever think about how weird this started?" he asked. I snorted. "You mean the part where you asked me to lie to your parents?" "Yeah," he said, smiling. "That." I tilted my head to look at him. "You still think it was fake?" He didn't even hesitate. "No." The word landed steady and sure. "I think," he continued, "that I just didn't have the language for what I already felt. You were safe. You were constant. And somewhere along the way, my brain decided that meant friend, because it was easier. My chest tightened. And now, he said softly, it feels like I finally stopped dodging myself. A month later, we went back to his parents' house. This time, there was no pretending. His mom noticed immediately. The way Connor sat closer. The way he looked at me when he thought no one was paying attention. She didn't say anything during dinner. But later, when Connor went to help his dad in the garage, she found me alone in the kitchen. You make him very happy, she said gently. I froze. I don't want to complicate things. She smiled. Sweetheart, Connor has always been complicated. You just happen to be the first person he's brave with. When Connor came back inside, she hugged him a little longer than usual. I'm proud of you, she said. He blinked. For what? For choosing honesty, she replied. That night, I'm still figuring myself out, he said quietly. I know. But I know this, he added, pressing his forehead to mine. I don't want a life where you're optional. That was it. No dramatic confession. No grand declaration. Just truth. These days, people sometimes ask how Connor and I got together. I usually smile and say, it started as a favor, but the real answer? It started the moment pretending stopped being easier than telling the truth. And somehow, asking me to be his fake boyfriend led him to finally be real. With me, and with himself. A year later, Connor still hates labels. But he hates losing me more. We don't correct people when they assume things, and we don't over-explain when they don't. Sometimes he says, my boyfriend, like he's testing the word on his tongue. Sometimes he just says my name, and honestly, that's when it means the most. The night it really hit me was stupidly ordinary. We were at the grocery store, arguing about pasta brands like an old married couple. I was holding a basket. Connor was reading labels like it was a life or death decision. An older guy passed us, smiled, and said, you two remind me of my husband and me. Same arguments. Connor froze. I felt his hand tighten around mine. For half a second, I thought he'd pull away. Old reflex. Old fear. Instead, he smiled back. Yeah, he said. We're like that too. The guy nodded, walked on. Connor didn't let go of my hand. You okay? I asked. He nodded, eyes a little glassy. I didn't panic. I smiled softly. No, you didn't. He leaned his forehead against mine in the parking lot, keys digging into his palm, heart steady against my chest. You know, he said quietly, if I hadn't asked you to pretend, I might have spent my whole life avoiding this. I shrugged. Guess you needed a lie to find the truth. He laughed, then kissed me. Not careful, not questioning, not afraid of who might see. And that's the thing people don't get. This wasn't a story about a straight guy turning gay, or a fake relationship becoming real, or some dramatic awakening. It was a story about a man who finally stopped running, and the friend who stayed long enough to be chosen. He asked me to be his fake boyfriend. I ended up being the person he came home to, and neither of us is pretending anymore.